today on an all-new Dr. Phil. Real estate bias.
A seller will say, tell me about the buyers. I said, oh, they're a great couple. And they said, well, what's their nationality?
Exposed.
Recorded documents that are put on almost every property saying if you're not of Caucasian race, you cannot purchase that property.
It's disgusting.
Beyond disgusting. This cannot be tolerated because it's very true.
We're gonna go down with a fight.
Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. Yesterday, we talked about a topic that seemed to come out of nowhere to some Americans, yet very familiar to others. I'm talking about real estate bias, when homeowners suffer from discriminatory practices and bias in housing and mortgage lending fields. Now, examples of this include racial steering, lending discrimination, and appraisal discrimination. And yes, that is still going on in America. My co-executive producer, Astra Austin, brought this to my attention, and I'm really glad she did. She explained to me that her parents were steered to a particular neighborhood when they bought their home on Long Island from a white realtor in 1975 during the middle of white flight, the phenomena of white people moving out of neighborhoods when black people move in. Now, years later, she estimates that her parents' impeccable, well-cared-for home is valued at least $250,000 less than the same home in a majority white neighborhood. Now, she and many residents believe this gap is mainly based on the skin color of the neighborhood residents and not the quality of the homes. Now, Astra insisted that various forms of real estate bias are still happening nationwide, and we just had to talk about it. So yesterday, I met with people who claim they were victims of real estate bias, including Keisha, who made news headlines after she revealed on TikTok the strange and at times disturbing behaviors she witnessed after she inherited her grandfather Daniel's home in a multi-million-dollar neighborhood in Seattle.
America has a major racial wealth gap.
The typical black family has only a fraction of the wealth of the typical white family, and many experts say that the root of that problem is real estate.
One of the drivers of that wealth gap is redlining. Redlining was outlawed in 1968, but its impact remains.
About 2 years ago, my life was turned upside down when I inherited my grandfather's multi-million-dollar home. I started receiving letters from people attempting to buy his house. One stated that I was behind in my taxes, which I was not. One neighbor offered me $800,000. I know my house is worth almost $2 million. I decided to remodel the house. I have an 820 credit score. I was denied for loans repeatedly.
What do you think was the most racially motivated attempt to exploit you?
The letters were very clear, like, we don't want you here. To get an appraisal, one of the requests is, we need you to not show that this is a black home.
How many times did you try to get loans to renovate that home?
Oh my God, I would say probably 12. Denied. I barely had any debt. I should have been a perfect candidate for her.
Perfect candidate?
Yeah.
I mean, you got a great credit score. You have no mortgage. You did your renovations.
Oh, yeah.
And how did you do them?
Thank God my grandpa encouraged me to get a house at 21, so I sold my home to renovate.
Therein lies the problem.
Yes.
You sold an asset that you had that had appreciated.
Yeah.
That's something that is absolutely shameful.
James and myself have been licensed real estate brokers for more than a decade. On August 20th, we went to purchase 3 condominium units.
This particular agent said, quote unquote, I'm not going to sell to you because my gut feeling tells me that we wouldn't get along with you people.
They probably
I have my gut instinct told me probably we won't be able to get along with each other well.
We knew that we were being discriminated towards.
What were the questions she was asking?
Are you from this area? Like completely irrelevant questions.
When you're silent about your pain, people will kill you and say you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And so what are we supposed to do? Just be silent?
Josie Lynn declined to appear, but her lawyer did give a statement. My law firm represents Josie Lynn, while the Ramaris have chosen to literally market their version of their interaction with Ms. Lynn to every media outlet. I urge caution in giving any credence to the Ramaris' fictional account. When people move with breakneck speed to get in front of a camera, as the Ramaris have, to accuse another person of racial discrimination, media should approach such claims with extreme carefulness. In Ms. Lynn's case, when the unvarnished truth is told, it will be crystal clear that she did not discriminate against the Ramaris based on their race or ethnicity. Ms. Lynn is a person of color herself. She is a Chinese immigrant who came to America to work hard. She is cognizant of and devoted to treating all people with respect and dignity, irrespective of race or ethnicity.
Tanisha Tate Austin and her husband Paul say a white woman who appraised their home said its value at less than $1 million. So they ran an experiment
for a second appraisal with the help of a friend named Jan.
And the thing to know about Jan is
she's white.
They cleared away their own photos. After what they call their whitewash, the new appraisal came in. Nearly $1.5 million, close to $500,000 more than the appraisal roughly a month before.
So I really need that. I won't take out anyone unless you have a pre-qualification letter. So I need to know that you're pre-qualified for a mortgage.
All right, so that means I can't go out to see anything.
I'm just going to take some notes and introduce you to Sydney. I will send you listings this afternoon.
There is clearly discrimination in real estate. It's especially prominent on Long Island.
Where is the driver, Chris?
I think a lot of it on Long Island is zoning. The banks, the inability to get mortgages. Those are powerful forces. Real estate agents aren't the most powerful forces.
In this country, a lot of generational wealth is built on real estate. And when people are discriminated against, then that's going to perpetuate across generations, and it can't be allowed to continue. I want to add someone to the conversation, and this is Anthony Margulis, a real estate broker and owner of Amalfi Estates in Los Angeles. He claims he and his agents have witnessed some clients discriminating against prospective buyers based on skin color or sexual orientation, and they informed these clients that they're violating fair housing law. So, Anthony, thank you so much for being here and talking about this. You get pressure from the sellers.
We do. You know, there's several areas that we see it happening. A seller will say, tell me about the buyers. The first time it happened, I've had my company 30 years now. We've helped thousands of families throughout Los Angeles.
Well, your company's well known in LA for
sure. We do quite a bit in Los Angeles. And one of the first times a seller asked for probing information about the buyer. I said, oh, they're a great couple and, you know, down payment's good and they're well qualified. And they said, well, what's their nationality? And I was so shocked hearing that from someone. You think they're a normal person. You think you're talking to someone that has similar beliefs as you. And to see blatant racism, it's shocking. And so you explain to them 1968 fair housing laws. You explain to them that's illegal. You know, we can't work with you. One, that's not how our company operates. Added to some of this as well, appraisal issues that a couple of your guests have talked about. 97% of all appraisers are white. 97%. So then you wonder why there's an issue with appraisals. So I think we have to change it from within. And I think, you know, education is a really strong part of it. I think that'll help quite a bit. I know there's been restrictive covenants. I don't know if you'll be talking about that next, but that's restrictive covenants in Los Angeles, California, and throughout the country are basically recorded documents that are put on almost every property saying if you're not of Caucasian race, you cannot purchase that property, you can't sell it to someone, and you cannot purchase it. And those are recorded documents that are in most properties in Los Angeles and California and throughout the country. And there's ways to do redacted documents to get rid of that, which a law was just passed in California September of last year.
You're saying those are still on properties?
They're still on properties today.
Seriously?
The first time I read it, and it's a very visceral experience when you actually read racism on a document on a property. You first you're shocked. You're like, how could that even be? And it's written in a lot of homes, and people don't even know about it. It's on the recorded document of a lot of the grant deeds.
You know, one of the things all of us could do that are homeowners could look at our documents and see if that's on there and delete it.
Correct. Yeah. And so AB 1466 with Governor Newsom passed in September of last year gave people and allowed them the avenue to find the documents, actually redact it and re-record it at the county recorder's office. It was a way for local governments to restrict homeownership from people of color. And it was in direct violation of the 1968 Fair Housing Act.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Beyond disgusting.
We're going to meet a man who says that he participated as an expert in the Long Island Newsday investigation and claims he, along with another fair housing expert, found evidence of discrimination. He'll explain why they came to that determination next.
We keep talking about the 1968 Fair Housing Act. So 50 years later, virtually my entire career, there's still discrimination out there.
Next on Love and Marriage Huntsville.
I think I saw an interview and they asked Mel how she doing with Martell's new boo thing. Oh, she felt probably happier when he was leveling down. But the level up is kind of a gut punch.
Hey, Martell?
Hey, what up? And don't keep me outside all this damn
Yeah,
heat.
it's outside today.
You gonna invite me to that house? Don't play with me like that.
Love and Marriage Huntsville. New episode, Saturday at 8/7 Central.
Score low prices and great deals at Target. This week, save on the gifts they'll love at prices you'll love. Deals so good, you can holiday your way. Only at Target.
As a freshly certified B Corp, Nespresso joins a global movement using business as a force for good. So we don't just cultivate beautiful coffees today, we're committed to creating a beautiful tomorrow.
Culinary collection. Exciting new flavors like sofrito for casseroles or adobo for fajitas, each adding a little something special to all your family favorites. But don't take our word for it. The Culinary Collection from Better Than Bouillon.
C'est ça que j'adore. Parfum d'eau, the new fragrance, Dior.
At Macy's, the fragrance destination.
There is nothing hotter than real, honest-to-goodness love.
Mama wanna tell you where it's at. I wanna get that.
I was made for this.
Get with it or get lost.
You dropped the ball big time.
I'm throwing y'all my very own Miami yacht party.
It just shook up all of the dynamics.
Y'all ready for this?
Too often I hear people who aren't as familiar with this kind of work say, oh, well, they were just testers. But all you have to do is tell someone, which I have to do on a fairly regular basis, that you were turned down because of your race, and tell them the circumstances that occurred on a particular test, and you will see just how real and painful that injury is.
Elmont, you know, it's okay, it's good, you're very close to the city.
I do remember him pointing out on the map.
Some of these towns, in my opinion, are not necessarily the greatest in terms of school districts, safety, you know, crime, resale.
I think they're nice towns. I was brought up in Elmont, so I don't know. That kind of hurts my feelings.
We're talking about real estate bias, which takes many forms for people of color, including steering, not getting pre-approved for mortgage loans, and low appraisals. You just heard from Ashley, one of the participants or testers who went undercover for Long Island Newsday to help expose alleged bias by realtors. Now, Chris was just talking about the fact that you may need to look further than realtors because it comes from other areas. It's not just the realtors, and maybe isn't the realtors at all, but it's coming from zoning, it's coming from bankers, and it's, what we want to do is, I'm not here to try to win an argument, I'm here to try to solve a problem. Anthony, thank you for pointing out what you did about what's in these documents. That's something every one of us can work on. My next guest, Robert Schwimm, is the Ashland Spears Distinguished Research Professor Emeritus at the University of Kentucky College of Law. Now, he began his career as a fair housing attorney in the 70s and has written and lectured extensively on fair housing law ever since. Now, Robert says he participated as an expert in the 3-year Newsday investigation, and he claims he and another fair housing expert reviewed the tapes for evidence of discrimination and certainly found it. So, Bob, thank you so much for joining us and commenting on this today.
Happy to be with you. Thank you, Phil.
So what jumped out at you the most when you reviewed this?
We reviewed 100 different what we call matched tests. And about half of those were black white, some of them were Latino white, some of them were Asian white. And all we could do is say, do we find evidence of discrimination? As the attorney for one of the realtor agents said, we'd like our chance to explain that. But on the surface of the tapes, as a result of our conclusions, Newsday found that about 50% of the tests involving blacks and whites showed some form of discrimination. And those 3 forms, there were really 3 main forms. One was, and you touched on this earlier, inferior service. I'm not going to show you listings unless you are pre-qualified, told to black testers, not told to white testers. Another was steering. You said we're going to talk about steering. These testers came in and asked for exactly the same type of house. They were trained to ask for the same type of house. Steering is where the minority testers are sent to heavily minority areas, given listings in those areas. Whites are in other areas. And that one particular tester was wiping away a tear. She didn't find out until she compared her experience with the white tester that her hometown that had minorities in it was being undersold by some realtors. There was also the idea of you can't get mortgage help if you don't do certain things as a minority that we're not requiring of whites. I will say that of the tests we reviewed, there were quite a number of realtors who did exactly the right thing. We keep talking about the 1968 Fair Housing Act. So 50 years later, virtually my entire career, there is still discrimination out there. They lose sleep, their relationships with their family deteriorate. It's real.
Bob, can they make a case for intentional infliction of emotional distress?
It's a new leader in town. Well, you the one just threatening me? Bang your baby dad here. That's what I say. Come for me, go low. If you want to, I'm going to hell. Okay?
This book has helped me reach so many young homeowners who have become their parents.
Hey, what's the lowest you'll go on one of these mugs?
Well, remember, no haggling in stores.
Ah, yeah, chapter 6, yep.
They may have read the book, but they still have a long way to go.
I was hoping to get your John Hancock on there.
Well, let's just call it a signature.
I noticed there weren't any refreshments, so I'm just gonna leave a couple of snackies.
Folks, the line's a shambles. Let's tuck it in.
Sir?
Come on. Come on.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents, but we can protect your home and auto when you bundle with us.
Okay, we don't need a line monitor.
People who come to Cricket stay with Cricket.
Little did we know that switching to Cricket was going to be a major upgrade. The 5G is like fast.
Switch for the speed, stay for the savings. Smile, you're on Cricket.
For some, the rush of life is also the rush of escape. This is the BMW X1. Take control of your next adventure with a bolder design, and more versatile performance. This X1 is ready for that journey. From exhilarating all-wheel drive to the intelligent BMW curved display, your next escape is as simple as starting the engine. The X1 BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
At Walmart, save on thousands of gifts for everyone on your list. The savings are here all month long. Plus, get delivery on your gifts in as fast as 1 hour, right up to Christmas Eve. Shop Walmart online or in-store today.
Real, honest to goodness love.
Mama wanna tell you where it's at. I wanna get that.
I was made for this.
Get that. Baby,
Y'all ready for this?
You know, real estate being denied to Black Americans, it has been going on for decades. And back in 1964, CBS taped their own undercover investigation following a young Black couple trying to buy a home. I want to take a quick look at this because it deals with steering, and then have Bob explain what this all amounts to.
His name is Corbett Rochelle. He and his wife Sally have visited many real estate offices.
But as Corbett and Sally visited real estate offices, they ran into a problem. As CBS documented in this rare hidden camera footage, the Rochelles were repeatedly turned away.
Nothing at all.
What the Rochelles experienced was a practice known as steering, a way of excluding Black buyers from white neighborhoods. We tracked down Corbett and Sally's only child, Alicia.
Your family, with plenty of money, looking to buy a home in Bergen County, New Jersey, and never did.
Nope.
Did he ever find the house?
No. We moved out of New Jersey.
Did you say your parents died with no money?
No money.
What do you do with the fact that this house that they could not buy is almost definitely worth $750,000 or even $1 million today, and your family doesn't have it because of nothing more than racism?
Well, there's a lot of things that we haven't had because of racism.
And, you know, Keisha, that's what I'm talking about. You had to give up a $575,000 home that you acquired at the age of 21 that could still be building value now. And Bob, this steering, they were walking in and people telling them, no, we have not one house to show you.
Often what would happen in the tests that Newsday ran a couple of years ago was a little less blatant than 1964, but that's not saying much. What often happened is the minority tester was given listings, but they were substantially in communities that were heavily minority, and they weren't given listings elsewhere. And one of the points, I think, in addition to the lack of generational wealth that you've touched on, which is terrifically important, by the way, but where you live also determines where your children go to school. It determines their and your ability to get jobs, where you vote, the integration of the schools, a tremendous amount of things. And then a number of your guests, rightfully so, when they find out they've been discriminated against, this is an outrage. This is emotionally troublesome. I had a number of clients earlier in my career where we had to prove that they were emotionally upset. In a rental case, for example, you don't have financial differences much. So the damages are almost all emotional, but you can prove that. They lose sleep, their relationships with their family deteriorate, something you know, Phil, more than I do, but it's real, and it's very unfortunate.
Bob, can they make a case for intentional infliction of emotional distress under something like this?
They may be able to, but it's not necessary. The Fair Housing Act is clear that they are entitled to compensatory damages, and that includes financial, but it also includes all emotional distress damages that can be connected to the act of discrimination.
So under the Fair Housing Act, they can collect for that.
Yes, they don't need a special emotional distress statute beyond the Fair Housing Act. In fact, given that it's been 50 years, you'd think that would be outrageous enough. The Act also provides for punitive damages. It's hard to prove, and I think one of the underlying themes of your show is, if it wasn't for videotape evidence and some of the other kinds of evidence, this would go undetected, which is maybe some of the reasons that people still try to get away with it.
Wow.
Absolutely. There's only 28,000 complaints a year from the National Fair Housing Alliance Association, which is the only national organization that actually collects all the data. 28,000. Wow. And they think there's millions of cases that are not being reported.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're not encouraged.
I'm about to say, yeah,
Justin,
absolutely.
maybe we need to start putting body cams on these
Literally.
Well, I mean, so the analog is how we interact with police and how police interact with our communities. You know, and police brutality and policing in general has only become a part of the national conversation when we started implementing body cams on officers. But to your point, I mean, there's only 20,000 complaints, but anecdotally, there's 4 million people who deal with housing discrimination each year.
Is there a correlation between poor physical and mental health and socioeconomic, race, and ethnic composition of neighborhoods? Now, some of my guests today say yes, and real estate bias could have deadly consequences. We'll talk about that next. Closed captioning provided by...
Hey, did you hear? There are new COVID-19 booster shots designed for recent Omicron variants. Pfizer, the more you want to do, the more we want to do. Schedule yours at vaccines.gov.
Airwick scented oils are infused with natural essential oils to create authentic seasonal scents that fill your home with holiday spirit all season long. Connect to nature this season. Get your Macy's order faster with curbside pickup for your hosting essentials, in-store pickup for the big party, or same-day delivery for that last-minute gift. Get just what you need when you need it at Macy's.
Relapsing MS isn't the only thing I have going on. That's why my doctor and I chose Kesimpta. Kesimpta is different. It's the only B-cell treatment for RMS I can take at home once a month. Kesimpta was proven superior at reducing the rate of relapses, active lesions, and slowing disability progression versus Aubagio. For me, a once-monthly treatment just works for my schedule.
Don't take Kesimpta if you have hepatitis B, and tell your doctor if you have had it, as it could come back. Kesimpta can cause serious side effects, including infections. While no cases of PML were reported in RMS clinical trials, it could happen. Tell your doctor if you had or plan to have vaccines, or if you are or plan to become pregnant. Kesimpta may cause a decrease in some types of antibodies. The most common side effects are upper respiratory tract infection, headache, and injection reactions.
When I'm ready, I spend less than 1 minute a month taking Kesimpta. How I spend the rest of my time is up to me.
Ask your doctor about treating RMS with Kesimpta.
Taco Bell went a bit crazy with its breakfast. It was too much. What you need in the morning is tasty, simple food. Fluffy eggs, sausage, hash browns, and a warm tortilla. They should open a restaurant that only serves those breakfast crunch things.
You riffing, or is this part of the commercial?
Colorful and thoughtful and beautiful. You having your kind of holiday is our kind of holiday. Ulta Beauty. The possibilities are beautiful.
Bring home a spellcasting adventure with the Harry Potter Magicaster wand.
Stupefy!
Connect your smart devices, cast spells, and witness the magic come to life. Lights.
Lumos Maximum.
Sounds.
Media loading.
And your TV.
Expecto Patronum. Cool.
The Harry Potter Magicaster wand. Order now.
Next on Love and Marriage Huntsville.
I think I saw an interview, and they asked Mel how she doing with Martell's new boo thing. Oh, she felt probably happier when he was leveling down. But the level up is kind of a gut punch.
Hey, Martell?
Hey, what up? Hey, don't keep me outside all this damn
Yeah,
heat.
it's outside today.
You gonna invite me to that house? Don't play with me like that.
Love and Marriage Huntsville. New episode, Saturday at 8/7 Central.
Long Island was established as a white township, basically. I mean, Levittown. This was the beginning of major suburbia. After World War II, it was financed to provide housing for veterans in World War II. But African Americans could not live in Levittown.
We were looking for a place of our own. I saw an ad for homes in Levittown. And we looked at the house. I went up to the salesman And I said to him, we're interested in buying the house. He looked at me and he said, listen, it's not me, but the owners of this establishment has not at this time decided to sell to Negroes.
Mr. Levitt required restrictive racial covenants on the leases of the Levittown properties.
It was formed that way as a protection against having desegregation.
How are you feeling in that moment when the salesman finally tells you that they're not selling to Negroes?
Devastated. It shaped who I am to this day.
Well, we've talked about real estate bias against people of color and the people who say they were falsely accused of discrimination. Now, my next guest, Dr. Corey Yeager, is the psychotherapist for the Detroit Pistons and author of How Am I Doing? 40 Conversations to Have with Yourself. I've read this book. It is a very thought-provoking book. He says not only is real estate bias bad for health, but it's also a correlation between poor physical health and mental health and the socioeconomic, racial, and ethnic composition of the neighborhood you live in. Explain what you mean, Doctor.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
It is.
But Doc, what I would say is the hopelessness that is incurred by this real estate bias produces a struggle in the mental wellness of African Americans. So not only am I struggling from the lack and the opportunity for generational wealth and the handoff, but now I'm struggling with my own wellness. And I may well hand that struggle off to the generations that come behind me. So finding ways in which to address these issues in a manner that is fitting our mental wellness struggles is really important. I think one of the struggles that we have in this country around the issue of race is that we have yet to have a truth and reconciliation conversation. So if you go to South Africa and talk about issues, they'll tell you about apartheid. They'll tell you the story and the struggles of apartheid and the ills of that process. In this country, we won't really do that. We want to move to reconciliation without having truth-telling. So if we also, one of the things that I'll add is that we have a lack of understanding and contextualizing race. What we'll do in this country is decontextualize race. We'll move and pull context away because it's easier to explain things away, right? But if we add context to the conversation, it draws and asks for more information and deeper understanding. So for instance, as we watched George Floyd be murdered on the streets of my city in Minneapolis, white folks saw that as being a very bad thing. That was negative. But it was an incident. It was a unique, isolated thing that they watched. But as we in the Black community watched that, we saw 400 years of history on that moment. So when we talk about real estate bias and all these biases that we struggle with, there is a long and storied history of that struggle and a question that begs, what will we do to move through it?
And Dr. Yeager, that is a great point that you made, because that's exactly how I felt when I was denied. Literally, I thought about my grandmother who moved from Mississippi to St. Louis for a better place of what she believes from my father because of the racial discrimination there. I immediately felt that ancestor tap me on my shoulder and said that this cannot be tolerated, because it's very true.
Good men hold their peace, evil men have their way. So we went there to purchase not one, not two, but 3 units cash, and we were denied.
Closed captioning provided by...
There is nothing hotter than real, honest to goodness love.
Mama wanna tell you where it's at, I wanna get that.
I was made for this.
Get with it or get lost.
You dropped the ball big time.
I'm throwing y'all my very own Miami yacht party.
It just shook up all of the dynamics.
Y'all ready for this?
Oral treatment for COVID-19. Could it be right for you? If you have a high risk factor, like being over 65, heart disease, diabetes, asthma, or smoking, and you test positive, don't wait. Ask your provider about oral treatment right away.
Dude, you coming? Alka-Seltzer Plus Power Max gels with more concentrated power, because the only thing dripping should be your style. Plop Plop is fizz with Alka-Seltzer Plus. Also tried for fast sinus and pain relief.
Dancing is everything. Soccer is the best.
But her moderate to severe eczema could make it hard for her.
My skin was so itchy and my outfit was uncomfortable. Now, my skin's not as itchy.
Now, we're staying ahead of her eczema.
There's a power inside all of us to live our passion. And Dupixent works on the inside to help heal your skin from within. It helps block a key source of inflammation inside the body that can cause eczema, so they can have clearer skin and less itch. Serious allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Tell your doctor about new or worsening eye problems, such as eye pain or vision changes, including blurred vision, joint aches and pain, or a parasitic infection. Don't change or stop asthma medicines without talking to your doctor.
Healing from within is a wonderful thing.
Ask your child's eczema specialist how Dupixent can help heal their skin from within.
The biggest gift would be from me. Morning
How
Dole.
about a little pumpkin spice coffee mate to put you in the spirit?
And the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend. You know how to spice up my life.
Oh, I love us.
Coffee's perfect holiday mate, Coffee Mate.
Bob very wisely pointed out that there are tentacles of this. Bob, you're talking about it has to do with the schools and the tax base for resources in that community. So it perpetuates that standard of education and living and healthcare, the hospitals, everything. It perpetuates that whole experience by keeping it siloed in a particular area. And that's what the steering and the redlining. So it's more than just the house. It goes into the whole quality of life.
Yeah. When you call the medics, how fast do they come?
Yeah.
And it's an environmental justice issue as well. There's a community in Houston called Cashmere Gardens, which sits in a toxic dump area. And there's nothing but Black folks that live in that area. And they've been living there for generations.
Yeah.
Grandmothers, you know, their kids, their grandchildren, they've all developed the toxic results of living in a dump, and they're all generating cancer at an alarming level. And I think that's one of the issues that Bob is talking about, the residual effects of housing discrimination generation after generation.
And that's why we're here today. I mean, you know, when good men hold their peace, evil men have their way. We went there that day. That was our second showing. We strategically moved our resources around to be able to go and execute this transaction. So we went there to purchase not one, not two, but 3 units cash. And we were denied. And that's generational wealth. Now, we raise our children that we'll go down with them, but we won't lay down with them. If we're gonna go down, we're gonna go down with a fight.
Doc, let me hit the concept that I think we should also be engaging in when we talk about bias. I think bias, especially implicit, unconscious, things that we're not really clear on, but we're doing. We can be incongruent with our actions and our thoughts. So for instance, I can say, I am a supporter of the gender movement. I think women need this, that, and the other. I can profess that on a conscious level. But subconsciously, I can have actions that don't coincide with that. So oftentimes, a real estate agent can be saying, no, we want to make sure that we take care of the communities of color, but their actions may not coincide. It becomes incongruent. They don't fit together. So that recognition and awareness is critical. So conversations like this, Doctor, are critically important for the national, societal level of understanding, so we can move towards and into a space that says, hey, we can do something about it. You can't do anything without first being aware. Got to be aware, then we can make some moves. But with the lack of awareness, we'll wander and wonder for many years.
Real estate agents have more power than what we're giving them credit for.
Absolutely.
Because what it is that they're afraid of those who put them in position to be able to sell their assets.
Yeah, sure.
Be able to sell their real estate. And see, they're fearful. But see, fear is the inability to control your own thoughts. Yeah. And so you have to be able to control your own thoughts so that you can have control over your own actions and you can do what's right, because they have institutions and they have powerful people behind them that can actually help and assist in these types of things that are happening. Yeah. You know, you've got Texas Real Estate Commission in our state. You've got National Association of Realtors. These are organizations that are there for a reason. So if you see these things, it's important for you to speak out about it so that we don't have to go through this anymore. It's ridiculous and it has to stop.
And it's crazy.
We got to take a break. Then Justin, I'm going to come to you when we come back. My thoughts on this important topic, and we'll hear from Justin when we come back.
Today, you can give a gift like no other. A gift that can help St. Jude Children's Research Hospital save lives.
I think it's the most worthwhile place to put your money when it comes to childhood cancer.
If it weren't for St. Jude, I wouldn't be sitting here today. If it weren't for St. Jude, a lot of kids wouldn't be with their families every day.
Let's come together to help the children of St. Jude fight childhood cancer. Visit this website, call this number, or scan the QR code with your $19 monthly donation. Join with your debit or credit card right now, and we'll send you this St. Jude t-shirt you can proudly wear to show your support. Today, you can help St. Jude save lives.
It takes a heart for somebody to say, I have this extra that I'm willing to give to St. Jude so that they can help save more lives.
Make your monthly donation today to help cure childhood cancer everywhere.
Cleaning is the worst. Seriously, there's gotta be a better way. So we gave Swiffer a shot. If we don't love it, we get our money back. Spoiler alert, love it.
Sweeper's heavy-duty dry cloths grab dust and hair and lock it away. Better than my broom that can push it around. It even gets into hard-to-clean grooves and grout lines. Cool.
And Swiffer Duster gets in all those hard-to-reach places, trapping 3 times more dust. Yeah, switching to Swiffer, totally worth it. Love it or your money back.
Dude, you coming?
Because the only thing dripping should be your style. Plop Plop is Fizz with Alka-Seltzer Plus cold and flu relief. Also try for Fizzy Fast cough relief.
Daisy, 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 Daisy. Daisy, Marc Jacobs.
At Macy's, the fragrance destination.
It's a new leader in town.
Are you the one just threatening me? Band up, baby, dad here. That's what I say. Come for me, go low. If you want to, I'm going to hell. Okay?
Yeah, we're talking about real estate bias today, and, you know, enough's enough and too much is too much. If it's allowed to be part of our society, part of our culture, the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968. But yet you can pass an act, but do you enforce it? Do you monitor it? Are you vigilant about it? And the answer is apparently not very, certainly not enough. Justin, you had a comment you wanted to make. What did you want to say?
But one of the things that I think about when we have this conversation is this notion of diversity in our communities and neighborhoods. Black people need diversity to get access to necessary resources. Good grocery stores, good schools, paved roads, right? Homes that don't have lead issues, homes that are in toxic neighborhoods. But white folks, for lack of a way of putting it, they don't need diversity to have access to those resources. So Black people desperately need resources due to diversity to make sure that we can live fulfilling lives that are healthy. White people can kind of use it as a privilege. Oh, I would like to live in a diverse community, but I don't necessarily need it. That's the line of demarcation.
Diversity can be a coverall, Doc. Oftentimes, I can pull away by saying, well, we want a diverse group of folks. Exactly. Everyone, this whole group is all diverse. that we all have different income.
But what language do you want to use?
So be specific about it. So if we're talking about racial bias, let's talk about race. Let's make sure that we don't conflate all these other things that we could be discussing and stick with that specific combo.
So you don't want to confuse tall and short.
Yeah, that's right, Doc.
You're talking about let's get to race.
So if we are in a conversation about gender, it does not diminish race to put that on the sideline and be very specific about gender for that conversation. But if we conflate it and just talk about diversity, we get a pull back because we talk about using the race card and we have to understand who dealt the cards. Okay. I can't play no race card unless somebody's dealing out there. Somebody got to shuffle and deal the deck. Yeah, absolutely. So how are we understanding that as well?
Okay, but what we're talking about right now then, to be clear, what Justin is talking about is race.
Yes.
That we're talking about having people of color have access to hospitals, grocery stores, schools, with resources, with books, with computers, with the things necessary
police departments that respond to 911 calls in a timely fashion.
Sidewalks.
Right. But what you just did, Doc, is exactly it. That's what you just did, Doc, is exactly it. Because you're very specific. Your show is, this show, what we're doing today, is very specific. It's not dancing, saying, well, there's a lot of bias in real estate, a lot of different people. No, very specifically, you said, hey, we're talking about racialized bias within the real estate process.
Well, and Bob, you're the one that put a fine point on this in saying that it goes beyond just the house. It's all the things that come with where that house is. That's where all those resources are. As Keisha said, sidewalks, a good hospital. It's all of those things that come with where that property is and the tax base that property has that gives you the streets, the resources, all the things that raise you to a higher level of existence in this world. That's what you're talking about, right, Bob?
I think it's amazing it would be amazing and sorrowful to the legislators in Congress who passed the 1968 Fair Housing Law to hear this conversation, but also against the backdrop that we still talk about African-American neighborhoods and Latino neighborhoods and white neighborhoods. I think their vision was that if you pass this law and people acted in abeyance of this law by a generation or two, you wouldn't have that with all of the attendant problems. I'd also like to say real quickly how easy the Fair Housing Act is to obey. All you have to do is treat people equally. If you talk about the good schools to one candidate, talk about good schools to all candidates. There also is virtually no affirmative action requests or demands in the Fair Housing Act. Just treat people equally. And I think over generations, unfortunately, my generation hasn't done a great job, but I do believe that younger real estate agents and younger people, as one person said, we have to get more people of color in the appraisal business and younger people.
Yeah.
So I'm an optimist long term. I wish it hadn't taken this long.
Closed captioning provided by...
There is nothing hotter than real, honest to goodness love.
Mama wanna tell you where it's at. I wanna get that.
I was made for this.
Get with it or get lost.
You dropped the ball big time.
I'm throwing y'all my very own Miami yacht party.
It just shook up all of the dynamics.
Y'all ready for this?
The long-lasting scent of Gain Flings made it smell like Dave was in his happy place. The massage chair at the mall. But he wasn't. Gain Flings with OxyBoost and Febreze. Bye-bye, tough odors. Try Gain Odor Defense.
Peaceful state. Full plate. Wait, are you my blind date? Dancing crew, trip for two, now the final interview. Buy or lease. Masterpiece. Inside joke. Artichoke. Game with Doug. brand new mug. Come here, kid. Give me a hug. Have you gotten your updated COVID-19 booster? They're designed to help protect against recent Omicron variants. Schedule yours at vaccines.gov.
There's something new from Better Than Bouillon. Introducing the Culinary Collection. Chef-created flavor combinations like smoky chipotle and Italian herb that add a little something special to your family favorites. But don't take our word for it. The Culinary Collection from Better Than Bouillon.
Colorful and thoughtful and beautiful. You having your kind of holiday is our kind of holiday. Ulta Beauty. The possibilities are beautiful.
People who come to Cricket stay with Cricket.
Cricket is easy, it's affordable, customer service is top-notch. That's why I've been with them for so long.
With all that, I'd stay a while too. Smile, you're on Cricket.
Go, y'all.
We're going ice skating.
You got it, Chuck. Come on, come on.
You know, I'm here to learn. I sit up here and I'm kind of the traffic cop in these things sometimes, but I'm here to learn. And Astra Austin is one of my co-executive producers and has been here at Dr. Phil for the whole journey. She brought this topic to my attention and was pivotal behind the scenes in jump-starting this conversation. And, you know, I thank her for, you know, bringing this to a point, and I hope we can continue this conversation. You know, we're out of time for today, but I think we've really covered a lot of things today, and I really appreciate everybody coming here and being willing to talk about it. And I hope it is thought-provoking to everybody, and I hope when you, all of you, when you choose a realtor, you know, you ask them questions and make sure they conduct themselves in a way that you're proud of. And, you know, I've always said, I think we just at a fundamental level, we need to treat ourselves and each other with dignity and respect. And I think that's one of the things that's wrong with our society today beyond this issue. I think it's the reason there's divisiveness in this country right now, the reason we're not willing to listen to each other. It's a fundamental value. We need to treat ourselves and others with dignity and respect. And when you do that, there's no room for this kind of thing. I want to thank all of my guests today. Really think about what we've talked about here and be affirmative in your actions about it. Now, today, before we go, we want to take a moment to say that over the Thanksgiving break, we lost an important member of our Dr. Phil family, Sean Normando. Now, Sean was an editor who joined us in season 5 to work on Dr. Phil, then also for our son, Jay, promoting his show, The Doctors.
Jay was heartbroken to learn of Sean's passing and said that Sean was a great guy and such a part of The Office and the shows. Jay thought he was incredibly talented, but even more kind and charismatic.
Sean has been a rock on our nighttime edit staff, always cool and collected and always ready with a smile for everyone he interacted with. He was an integral part of the promo editing team. He loved discussing music and was always helpful on special projects. The producers and editors he worked with thought he was incredibly generous with his time and his talents.
Sean was a great brother to Leah, Jake, Baruska, and Damian, and our hearts go out to them. And the joy of his life was his son, Lucas, such a sweet boy.
On behalf of our entire staff, our hearts and prayers go out to Sean's family, his siblings, his mother, Valerie, and his stepfather, Jim, his father, Ron, and his girlfriend, Cindy, and of course, his son, Lucas. Here are a few of his family's favorite photos.
wanted to reach out to you, but I just couldn't face the truth. And what else could I do but everything? And now nothing matters at all. Still feel my heart broken to pieces, and the morning is missing you here. Though I try, I just can't find a reason, but the emptiness is crystal clear. And I think of all the things I didn't give you, and the part of me I wanted to hide. And I tell myself it's gonna get better, but I'm falling straight down and head first through empty skies.
It's not just a cliche when we say it really is a family here, and we all feel the loss of Sean. Sean Normando, you will be missed. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.
Today on an all-new Dr. Phil. Sometimes love hurts.
I was pulling out his hair. He hit me in the eye.
And they have the scars to prove it.
You've broken her collarbone?
I didn't break her collarbone.
You were just standing there and her collarbone snapped.
He tells me I'm a horrible person.
Jen is a sociopath. She grabs my hair. Do they not have the right to, you know...
Pull her hair back?
Yeah.
What are we, in kindergarten? Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today's going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
I am not giving up on you.
Thank you. All right, I have a question for you. Now think about this. Have you ever loved someone so much that it hurts? Yes. Well, my guests today say they have the scars to prove it. Josh says he loves his fiancée, Jen, deeply, but is ready to call it quits because he claims she scratches, slaps, and punches him, and has even pulled a steak knife on him twice. Now, Josh admits that he has also been physical with Jen, but claims it was in self-defense. Now, Jen says he has ripped out chunks of her hair, given her black eyes, broken her collarbone, and even slammed her head into the refrigerator. This doesn't sound like love to me. Take a look.
My relationship with Jen is toxic, dysfunctional, and abusive. She's constantly beating me up and attacking me. Jen is a sociopath. In the beginning, Jen and I's relationship was good. We were happy. We started arguing after the first 4 months.
You were already in heated arguments.
Yeah, but that's how it always is. It goes from an argument to her attacking.
The first time that he slapped me was whenever he told me I wasn't worthy of being the mother of his child. I slapped him first, and then he slapped me back and pulled me by the hair. Some hair came out when he was defending himself.
Another time, I ended up saying something that made her mad, and Jen comes flying in the room trying to attack me. She swung, trying to punch me. I deflected it and pushed her.
I went to slap him. He pushed me off of him, and I just fell on my arm. I broke my collarbone. My arm was in a sling for 3 months. Yet again, I was trying to attack him, and I tripped and I hit my head right here. I had 6 stitches in my forehead. Another time I got a black eye when I went after Josh. I was scratching and pulling out his hair, and I turned my face to try to attack him again, and it hit me in the eye.
The only time I get physical abusive is out of self-protection. Our house is destroyed because Jen has punched holes in the wall. She's busted the door off the hinges.
I love him so much. When somebody that I love that much hurts me, it affects my soul. I just fly off the handle.
I have permanent scars on my body from Jen. She likes to scratch, and she makes me bleed. She leaves scars.
I was trying to restrain Jen from attacking me. She clawed my back.
I would definitely marry Josh tomorrow. I love him very, very much.
We don't have a date set to get married because Jen and I constantly argue.
I don't want to leave him, and I don't want him to leave me.
Okay, how long have you two been together?
2.5 years.
Are you in love with him?
Yes, of course I'm in love with him.
You say he doesn't even understand how much you love him.
He doesn't understand how much I love him. Like, I really don't believe that he does. I think that he likes to accuse me of not caring about him because of the arguments that we get into. But that's completely not true. Like, I wouldn't have asked to come on this show if I didn't want to be with him. You know, that's how much I'm trying to prove to him that I want to make this work.
It's confusing to me. You say you love him, but yet you hit him, you kick him, you scratch him, you try to rip his face off.
I don't agree. I think, you know, I take full responsibility.
You don't agree with what?
I don't agree that I should hit him. I do not agree with that.
So you agree with me, you just don't agree with what you do.
I don't agree with what I do. I agree with you, yes,
Okay.
of course. But at the same time, it's like, you know, I'm not trying to make excuses and saying that anything that I've done is correct, but neither is he. And
Okay,
I don't think that
stop,
he takes responsibility.
Stop. You just waved a red flag in front of me. You just said, I'm not trying to make excuses, but.
Right.
But means forget what I just said. Now I'm going to tell you what I really think. I'm not trying to make excuses, but now let me give you some excuses. Okay, so I just wanted you to know that's what I hear when you say that. So now give me your excuses.
I don't think that he takes full responsibility for the things that he does.
Okay, so what you're really saying is I hit him, beat him, scratch him, tried to rip his face off, come at him with a knife twice because he makes me do it.
No, he doesn't make me do it.
Well, that's what you just said.
No, that is me. That's my anger issues. And I have, you know, I need really serious help with that because whenever he says something, it hurts me so incredibly deeply that I react without even thinking.
Well, he just shouldn't do that. So what's the deal here? You've broken her collarbone?
I didn't break her collarbone. I didn't break her collarbone.
You were just standing there and her collarbone snapped.
No, that's not the case. No.
Damn it, I hate it when that happens.
She came at me.
Me too.
When somebody comes at you and tries to attack you, and you have to deflect punches, and you know, as they're swinging, you push them away, and they twirl to the ground.
You've been with her for 2.5 years.
Yes.
Are you known to be a slow learner?
No.
No, seriously. Were you known to be a slow learner?
Not as far as no.
Did you do okay in school?
Yeah.
You operate a motor vehicle?
Yeah.
Did you dress yourself this morning?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So 2.5 years you've been with her. How many fights have you had?
I've lost
How many
track.
times had she attacked you before you had to push her off of you and she broke her collarbone?
15, 10, I don't know. I mean, a lot. More than I could count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how many months had you been together before you were just standing there and her collarbone snapped?
Probably, I'd say a year.
So a year. And during that year, you had a lot of opportunities to learn that this was a volatile relationship.
Yes, it's a very toxic relationship, and it's dysfunctional. That's why I agreed to come on the show.
But you stay in it even though you can predict.
Jen. I love Jen. I mean, but I don't, like, I've almost left Jen, I don't know how many times. Like, I've broken up with Jim. I've broken up with Jen. Yeah,
then
I've
sleeps with
tried
me
to get her away from me. I've left my own house because.
She says you've dragged her by her hair.
No, I did She will. Okay, she grabs my hair. Like I said, she initiates all the physical fight, anything physical. She initiates.
So then that makes it okay for you to pull
So
somebody
if somebody's
by their
pulling
hair.
if somebody's pulling anybody's hair, like, do they not have the right to, not get their hair pulled? And I mean,
do you not have the right to pull her hair back?
Yeah.
What are we in kindergarten?
Exactly, and it doesn't make any sense. You're right. But I mean, it's still not right.
He pulled my hair. Well, I pulled his hair. Well, he pulled my hair. Well, I pulled his hair.
It's still not right. It's still not right.
What, are you kidding me?
But the fact, like, what am I supposed to do? Now, you have somebody attacking you.
No, see, this is the problem here. You got people resort to physical violence when they run out of socially acceptable ways to express themselves.
Right.
And Jen can't. She doesn't know how to talk.
I'm going to point out to you a real flaw in your relationship pattern here. We're going to take a break. Joss gives us a tour of the damage Jen has done when she runs out of socially acceptable ways to express herself, including ripping a door off the hinges and punching holes in the walls. Now, this goes two ways, but I'm going to show them a serious flaw in the communication pattern when we come back.
I'm physically abusive in reaction to